The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The North Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Hello people, welcome back to North Kesteven for the final time this working week. Now this place is loaded with loads of historical bits and bobs. Would you believe, for example, that this used to be a port? Well, it certainly took me by surprise when I learned that. This is the village and the parish of Swaton. Swaton, Swaffer's farm. Now, what with all that egg-throwing malarkey which we covered yesterday, you'd have probably expected today's village to be sort of the same, full of some more quirky bits and bobs. Far from it though, folks. Today we're in Swaton, where things are a lot more peaceful and calm, and nobody's throwing eggs around its streets. Swaton is situated on the B1394, less than half a mile from the main A52. It's directly south of Thorpe Latimer, where all those egg-throwing shenanigans take place annually. Swaton can be defined as a linear village, although it does have a couple of lanes that lead away from it. We can walk around this one in a neat little loop actually, thanks mainly to the presence of a handy footpath. Water is an important feature of Swaton. Running through the village is a small river, the Swaton O, which eventually joins up with the south 40-foot drain. Before the draining of the Fens, Swaton O was navigable and a large inland port existed close to a bridge over it. The Roman Car Dyke runs to the east of the village as well. Historically, it's a bit of a mishmash, this one. There are some Roman brick pits in the parish, but a lot of modern-day Swaton began being built in the 17th and 18th centuries. There are far newer houses than that too, in places. A couple of notable folks have called this home, including Nichola de la Haye, a lady who served as High Sheriff of Lincolnshire for King John. Her granddaughter was also at the centre of a dispute involving local village markets. Let's discover how as we take a gentle stroll around the village, famous for its eggs. We begin our walk on a 17th century bridge which crosses a small stream called Swaton O. Now, don't be fooled by the size of this waterway. It might be a tiny trickle these days, but in the past, Swaton O was much larger and much more important. It used to be navigable. Before the draining of the Fens, Swaton had a large inland port, which was located close to the current bridge. Maps from the 17th century clearly show that Swaton was closer to the sea and the O was a large river. In the 1970s, it was common to see eels darting around in the waters of the O. Sadly, this no longer seems to be the case. As if the presence of this waterway wasn't enough, the Roman Car Dyke runs to the east of the village too. It's a very watery themed opening to this episode. Odd, given it's so far inland, right? Here's the old post office on West Street, a road which runs westwards, surprisingly enough, away from the main village street. This is all residential, barring a couple of farms or farm buildings, and it's a mix of both the new and old in terms of property. Let's continue with the history lesson. The Romans would have known Swaton quite well. In fact, Roman brick pits remain visible within the village if one takes the time to look for them. Physical evidence for the Roman occupation of the village comes in the form of vast amounts of pottery which have been found in and around it, in some cases very high class. The Romans had an interest in the Lincolnshire coastline for one main reason. During Roman times, when Swaton was situated along the coastline, salt would have been plentiful, and they utilised it. As such, evidence of Roman sultans have been found in the village before now. Not much is known about Swaton before the Romans came along, but this area has been populated for a long time. The first sign of man in Swaton is evidenced by a polished stone axe dating from the Mesolithic period, that's around 6000 BC. There's a number of sites in the village that indicate Stone Age settlements, but little has ever been found. The name Swaton is Saxon. One of the earliest forms of the name is Swaton, which means Swaffer's farmstead. There seemed at one time to be little evidence of the Saxons in Swaton, but this all changed when a young lady found part of a decorated cremation urn a few years back. A French ecclesiastical document also refers to a church in Swaton in the 9th century. In medieval times, Swaton became a very important place, changing ownership between kings and earls. After the Norman period, Swaton came back into royal possession. That fact will become important in a bit. Later it was given by Henry II as a dowry to Matilda de Verdon. Matilda's daughter, Nichola de la Haye, was once married to Gerald de Camville, the constable of Lincoln Castle. After his death, Nichola herself became the constable and held the castle against a French siege for King John. In a tomb at St Michael's Church there lies a lady with a dog at her feet, and for a long time it's been supposed that it was the final resting place of Nichola de la Haye. However, the UK's leading expert on her has since stated the effigy is likely to be either Idonia Longspee or Ella Longspee, Nichola's daughter or granddaughter. So the lane we're walking along here is a dead end, but it forks into two pieces. Up this way, it's just literally a house at the end of that. The other way, I don't know where it really goes, but we're not going all the way up it anyway, because when we get past a farm in a few moments' time, we're taking a right turn, which will take us across a field. Now I'm hoping, given what the weather looks like right now and how it has been over the last couple of days, that this isn't too muddy. This is literally the only field I've got to walk on this week, so hopefully I get lucky with it. To get back to the main road through the village, we've now got to walk along a footpath through a field. Hey, nobody ever said planning these routes was an easy task. It's just open, flat fenland in most directions here, so that means more time to throw in another tale. In 1240, William Longspee and his wife Idonia, the granddaughter of Nichola de la Haye, applied for and were granted a royal charter to run a Friday market in the village. This grant was unsuccessfully challenged by residents of Folkingham and Sleaford, who feared it would damage their own Saturday and Monday markets. So, with no opposition, Swaton did indeed hold a weekly market on a Friday and 2 4-day fairs annually. Towards the end of the medieval period, Swaton was given to the abbots of Barlings. At the dissolution of the monasteries, the abbots lost Swaton and it was given to the Lee Warner family of Norfolk. It remained in their family until the end of the 19th century. Swaton has a link to the Civil War. In 1689, Scottish troops in Ipswich, discontented with their lot, mutinied and made north for Scotland, taking with them cannons and a host of regimental finances. They arrived in Swaton in the March during some very bad flooding. The king, William of Orange, sent his general Godart de Ginkle after them. He caught up with them and a battle took place on Swaton Common. The mutineers lost and were then held prisoner at the church in nearby Folkingham. There is a rumour that, along with many other churches in the area, the horses of Oliver Cromwell's troops were housed in Swaton while the men slept in the churchyard on their march to Newark. That's never been proven though. Given all that eventful history, you'd never expect Swaton to be the quiet rural village it is now. This long and linear village with about 90 houses and 10 miles from its nearest town has had a very storied past. Next time you pass through, just know it wasn't always the peaceful oasis it seems to be today. Well, to be honest, that wasn't too bad. It's just this end bit that was a bit boggy underfoot, but of course that's where tractors enter the field. The other bit was fine up to the top end. So yeah, if you want to follow this route, you won't be needing your wellies, I don't think, on that, to be honest. So we've reached the main road again, and we're going to take a left turn, but we're not going very far up here. You see, Swaton is a very long and linear village, and we've seen one of its main streets, and this is the other one. This one leads to Helpringham, and it's just basically a bunch of houses up there until you get to Thorpe Latimer. Now, I've already covered that in the drive-in, so we're only going as far as that little hut you can see on the right-hand side just beyond the church. And hut is an appropriate name for that. Now we come to a park. Usually with playgrounds such as these, it's just a quick look before we move on elsewhere. Not here though. This one has a backstory to it, which I'm going to tell. In 2001, Swaton had no park, and the children of the village were pretty unhappy about it. It was a little hard to find any land for one. You see, Swaton is surrounded by crown land and farmland which is privately owned. You can appreciate, therefore, the struggle in trying to find a suitable piece. However, had the children and the residents of the village not campaigned for this park, Swaton wouldn't have its own episode on TVI. Whilst supporting the children's campaign for a park, local residents Gail Deptford and Barry Jeffrey realised that the only way they could effectively bring about improvements within the village was to campaign for and negotiate the creation of a new parish council, and that seemed to do the trick. Swaton Parish Council then is one of the newest in the country and the first new one in Lincolnshire since 1974. It took around 13 years for the council to convince the Crown to give up a piece of land, but they eventually did. Mind you, the council also managed to secure other improvements in the meantime. These included achieving grants for 2 bus shelters, an agreement for a main sewerage scheme, traffic calming initiatives, repairs to footpaths, and the reinstatement of a polling station. They also improved the village hall. It was in late 2012, after constant badgering, that the Crown finally agreed to release a small parcel of grazing land to the north of the church to become the children's play area. You see, the moral of the story is here, folks, if you work together as a team and that team perseveres enough, you will get things done. This park? QED. Okay, parish notice board time, and you know what that means. One of these is going on there in just a second. But of course, there's something else to see on it too. A map of the village. There it is. Now of course this is a very rural place, so it's mainly house names and not numbers. You kind of expect that out here, don't you? Let's leave the card. Again, it's one of those boards that I don't really like because there's nowhere to actually slot the card, so it's just going to have to go underneath just there. Hopefully that's going to stay where it is. Now behind this board is something called the Hut, and this has got a story to it as well. In 2004, the council decided that the very run-down village hall, which used to be known as the Hut or the Village Hut, had to be replaced. So they founded the Swaton Community Trust with the specific purpose of raising funds to build a new community centre. The trust negotiated a lease with the Diocese of Lincoln and raised £75,000 from Community Council and landfill grants. The result was this new community building, rechristened the Hut and opened in October 2005. Their efforts have never stopped since. In January of this year, thanks to a grant obtained from the lottery, the council were able to add that large notice board where we've just left a card. They also added a scramble net to the trim trail in the park, which is already proving popular with kids of all ages. The Hut is an ideal place to hold a group activity. It can hold up to 60 people, and it's a great place to have a business meeting or a kid's birthday party, as well as those adult get-togethers like Christmas dinners and sports group gatherings. Swaton simply would not be without it now. St Michael's Church is the centrepiece of this tiny rural community, and what a church this is. There's no record of a church at Swaton in the Domesday Book, despite that French document from the 9th century. The Normans must then have quickly established one after the conquest. St Michael's is cruciform in plan, with a 13th century chancel and a 14th century nave. The major building took place in around 1230. This resulted in a church with a steep pitched roof, a low central tower, and possibly some aisles. Only the chancel and tower, constructed in rubble masonry, remain from those times. In 1320, the earlier nave was replaced by a new and grander one with aisles under one roof. The tower appears slender as it was built for the 13th century chancel, although the 14th century nave and aisles blend seamlessly with it nonetheless. St Michael's has an interior that's sparse of detail but magnificent in terms of proportions. The west window is one of the most impressive in Lincolnshire, rivalling that of Sleaford or Grantham. One wall features a medieval wheel of life painted upon it. Such paintings are rare. In fact, the only two still in good condition are in Gloucestershire and Northamptonshire. In the northwest corner lies that effigy of either Nichola de la Haye or her daughter or granddaughter. Even if this isn't Nichola herself, her importance to Swaton cannot be denied. In 1226, when over 70 years old, de la Haye retired from the castle to her estate at Swaton and died here on the 20th of November, 1230. Well, Swaton might be a small village, but when it comes to its church, it's nothing short of monumental. It's absolutely fabulous in here, and it's massive. You just can't appreciate how big this actually is. I mean, if you walk in here and look up, you'd be lucky not to crick your neck. The ceiling is that high. Beautiful church, though. Really is. Love it. And it's a credit to Swaton, to be honest with you. A village which is full of historical bits and bobs, and this is perhaps the jewel in its crown, maybe, shall we say. Right, time to head out of here and make our way back to where we started. Now, if you make your way to the back of the churchyard, you can see the super impressive Swaton Court. Look at that. Brilliant building that, isn't it? There's just time to mention a war hero buried in the churchyard too, Private Gilks, who died in World War I. In addition, also buried in the churchyard is a Mr. Holmes, a German prisoner of war who'd settled in the village after World War II. I'm kind of glad that all the egg throwing stuff takes place in Thorpe Latimer. Can you imagine how much stuff I'd have had to chuck into this one episode if it all took place within Swaton's parish boundaries instead? It's unbelievable how much history this one tiny little village holds. Are we up for another round in North Kesteven soon? I know I am. See you later, everyone. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.